Hello, everyone. So today we have Mr. Deepak. I will just give a brief introduction about Mr. Deepak, and then I will also request Mr. Deepak if he wants to add more details into the introduction. He's a very seasoned technology leader in the industry. He is currently working as a VP of Platform Engineering and Managing Director for Pega Systems. Prior to that, he was SVP of Engineering and Managing Director for NetApp, and before that, he has played in role in a lot of American tech companies, CMC, Adobe System, LIC, Logic, and other companies. Also, he has served on the board of IACC, which is full form is Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, and also he is currently in the advisory board for Genove, and advises obviously several other startups. Since he's board member at Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, I'm sure in his network he's must be advising a lot of startups. And also he has been on the award side, he has been also awarded as top 50 business growth leaders 2022 by BizTalk World Conference, and outstanding leadership award by Internet 2.0 Conference 2023. And educationally he has got prestigious degrees with him. He has got a analyst degree from US, then I think he subsequently did a MBA also from there. And what I'm able to understand that over 30 to 35 years of his career, he has spent very initial part of his career in the US, and then later part he has spent, I think, in India, and then traveling across the world. Obviously, because he is right now must be managing very large team uh, in the tech side. So okay, welcome Deepak, and welcome to our podcast. And we are very happy to have you over here. So,
Thank you so much, Rupesh. Thank you for that introduction. I really appreciate you having me on this podcast.
okay, sure. Thank you, sir. And so, Deepak, just wanted to start off. What is the in your role? What is the project which you're managing? What is the most exciting part, or what is the most challenging part? I would say both ways.
Yeah.
What keeps you on going further?
Uh, well, so I think first of all, I think we are all grateful to have these kind of roles that are available in the industry that we can play that can actually keep us engaged and driven every day. I'm always excited to wake up and be able to find something that is exciting to want me to really get to work and do that kind of stuff, right? So I'm really grateful for the roles that keep us engaged and busy. Great to be in my role, right? In terms of really getting the teams to focus on developing the next generation technology that are a lot of the customers or our major enterprises at what they look for. Right? It's a great opportunity to be in that. It's also, I think, the exciting part really comes from a few other things in terms of when you have a large engineering organization and or an R&D center, of 2,000 plus people. There are always exciting things. Doesn't matter whether you look at in terms of, for example, how generative AI is actually bringing a significant revolution in technology in terms of whether, in our field, whether it is application developers or application users, for that matter, where, my group actually is predominantly building an AI-driven is actually in the market. There is an AI-driven platform that can actually build applications to solve workflows for that matter, right? And intelligent automation, customer engagement, or certain use cases that these platforms actually support. You don't often come across these kind of technology shifts that happen, and it's great to be involved and then be part of that story. And then, like I said, whether it is when you're running a large center, whether it is talent development, whether it is hiring talent, hiring or what have you, whether it is establishing relationship with clients, really understanding clients and be able to engage with them, building the right culture within the company, right? And then building, and of course, building world-class products, right? All of these are really exciting, and every day you get to, play a part in these things, and so there is really no dearth of excitement at all in my life from that point of view, right? So I'm really enjoying what I do every day.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Deepak. And Deepak, can you give a little bit more deep dive on what kind of products your team is developing? And uh, first, we can get into little deep dive into the products, and then
Yeah,
I'll go into the majorly into the how do we make sure that we are getting a bug-free journey. I see you have responded in a lot of detail, but
yeah.
first, I think if the viewers can get a bit of idea what kind of products you guys develop and in which market they are serving, number one, which verticals they are serving, sort of thing.
Absolutely. So from a product perspective, one of the things that Pega offers is a essentially an AI-driven low-code platform. Right? It's a platform using which our clients build applications on top of the platform in a rapid fashion. If you think about it in terms of, let's say, for example, a bank would want to be able to put together an application to manage credit card onboarding, or credit card handle credit card applications, or fraud management applications, or anything like that. An insurance company could potentially be processing claims. Similarly, an automobile company may be managing their workflows in terms of how they deal with their dealerships, whatever the use case may be. What our clients actually do is to be able to leverage the power of the platform to develop their application in a matter of days or weeks, rather than going and building them out from the scratch, which takes really months or years for that matter, right? So how do
Got
they
it.
how do they rapidly build applications that solve their business processes, or that solve their business problems in terms of being able to manage them through as a workflow or what have you. We predominantly operate in three different market segments, if you will. Right, in terms of, from a marketing perspective, one-to-one customer engagement, how do you personalize your engagement with your customers, and that communication and the offerings that they may have, to their clients. That's one of the areas, right? The second is really about being able to automate your workflows. Everything in terms of anything that can actually be defined as a business problem, anything that can be defined as a workflow can actually be completely automated using that platform. And thirdly, the customer service in terms of providing the service from a client perspective, using customer service as an application to, especially in a digital form. And what the application or what the platform allows our clients to do is to be able to develop these applications very rapidly without having to worry about what channels they actually deliver. It actually allows them to be able to, whether it is, they use it on a tablet, whether they use it on a mobile phone, whether they use it on a web front end, or whatever device that may be, right? So it automatically allows them to be able to deploy applications on all of these channels for that matter, right? And then on top of this platform, we also build some applications that for specific industry use cases, whether that is BFSI, including essentially financial services is a big segment. Healthcare is another big segment, whether it is automotive, energy, and oil sectors or what have you, right? Some of these are bigger customers. We really focus on working with very large enterprises. These are really large, top 200, 250 companies in the globe are our bigger customers, for that matter. Those are the ones that we work with predominantly.
Got it. Yeah, yeah, I know Pega Systems is like popular everywhere. So
Yeah,
I would say it has a very strong footprint in the US market, especially, and pretty
yes,
much all the tech teams are very much. It's sort of like, I would say, SAP products. That very
yeah,
complex, large workflows are managed by Pega System kind of products only. Uh,
exactly,
which no,
exactly.
not a simple product managed. No, it's extremely complex workflows driven.
We do excel in really solving complex problems for that matter. While simple, workflows can actually be easily managed within the product. We do excel in being able to handle complex workflows. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you. Sure. And Deepak, so now since you have, you guys are obviously developing your product and deploying in market and selling it also. So what
Yeah.
are the top five challenges which you make sure that your products at least bug free? because that's always matter of stress for overall head of engineering guy.
Yeah.
That once the product is developed, now it has gone to production. Now what will happen? So
Correct, correct. So I think, there are two things, right? One, even the statement of saying, something is bug free is really some, very, very broad statement, especially in the software world, right?
yes,
If somebody claims it is completely bug free, I would really have my own doubts in terms of how, so it's a question of how bug free, right?
yes,
And what is the level of quality bar that you set for yourselves, and how you manage that to a large extent. And when you're like, in terms of if you are developing a generic platform, like, how complex and how big that is, like the Pega Infinity platform that our clients actually use, is actually quite vast. And then when you look from a quality perspective, it has got so many different angles to it, or so many different components to it. It's got to be you have to wear a bigger hat. And in my mind, to your question of talking about, let's say, five challenges, top five, or top of mind things from a quality perspective, the number one thing to me is always regression. Clients really don't like regressions. If you're actually shipping something, it's got to really work. Everything that worked previously should, better be working, and
was working.
really, yeah, right. Nobody likes regressions, and I think
Yes,
that is a minimum bar to set. And as we are always passionate about adding new features, functionalities, and then the development teams are really focused on being able to add these new things, regressions do creep in. And then that is one of the things that I'm always conscious about. And what we want to be able to do is to ensure that regressions don't get introduced as we develop new features and functionalities, right? The second thing, we were talking a little bit earlier about, is these security vulnerabilities, especially if you're starting to use really open source components and open source tools and things in your development environment, and what have you. The extent to which changes are happening every day, and vulnerabilities are found every day, whether they're found internally, externally. You have to really stay on top of the security vulnerabilities, and then customers are always looking for, in terms of what are we doing within our products to be able to ensure that these vulnerabilities are solved in a timely fashion, right? That's the second thing I would say. The third thing is, we always want to be efficient in what we do, essentially to be able to define and leverage test automation, and be able to define that test automation pyramid in a way to balance how much of a unit and functional testing you do, where how much of investment goes into your integration testing or system tests, for that matter, and how do you design your end-to-end scenarios, being able to understand what you're, why are you even building the product the way you're building it, right?
got it.
And
Yes,
it is really good for, especially the QA organization, to understand that customer perspective as far as why are we building it, and then, how are our customers using it, and to define that, set of tests that we do, and then all the way take it to be able to do performance, scalability, resiliency tests, and in terms of before something gets shipped out, right?
got it.
Now that, I would say, the third one. The fourth one is code coverage. Often enough, especially as we develop, new features, functionalities, what have you, keeping up with the code coverage is also one of the challenges, both from a static analysis as well as from a dynamic analysis perspective, to ensure that you have enough and good coverage to be able to make sure that all of the paths are covered to a large extent. I think is very helpful. That is something that we always keep our keep an open mind, and look at constantly. And the last one I would say that we are more and more recently encountering is our ability to be able to maintain the especially the user experience testing, right? The user experience is something that is changing constantly, and how
Yes,
you keep up with that constant change. There is the design team that is actually listening to customers and listening to users and trying to make those changes. There are new development, that actually comes with the design changes. And then how do you keep up your test activity because of, especially from an automation perspective, right?
Got it.
There's a lot of flakiness that starts, coming into your automation, suites as such, and then how do you keep up with it, right? I think those are probably top of mind things from a quality perspective in my mind. Does that make sense from
Oh,
what
makes
you're
sense.
hearing in the industry?
No, Deepak, you covered holistically, in fact, pretty
Yeah.
much all the topic. So, in fact, I just have few questions on all the things which, like for the security assessment, are you guys doing in-house or do you do it like with a third party or like how do you guys manage your assessment framework that
Yeah.
or do you do it every month or every quarter kind of thing?
We do assessments like every quarter,
Okay,
but we actually have a regular testing process, based on the kind of releases and the product,
got it.
right? So it's
And
got
type
to
of client
be
also.
exactly,
Got it.
exactly,
Got it.
right? So whether it is a patch release, whether it's a maintenance release, whether it is a minor major release, depending on that, we make sure that every testing cycle includes a security test part of it, in the software development lifecycle, right? I think that
Got
is
it.
one thing that is important now is to be
Okay.
able to get to the mindset where your software development lifecycle actually includes security as a part of that lifecycle. It's embedded
Got
in,
it.
so
It's
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 not
pretty much
something.
a regular part of your job. It's not that you're doing as a special work kind of thing.
Exactly,
Got
exactly.
it.
That's kind of where we are getting to, and then we do use a combination of both. There is a lot of in-house, testing because the entire platform is so complex. So there is a bunch of things that we do internally. We have our own test framework and stuff that is actually built,
Got it.
and as well as leveraging some of the, third-party tools, purely from a security perspective, ensuring that we are actually getting all the external vulnerabilities that are identified and how we actually bring that in, or any libraries that we are actually using from an open source point of view. How do we keep up with it and ensure that every time we actually go do a new release, we look at all of these libraries, whether they are upgraded or not. And then how do you keep up with the security patches that come with those libraries, right? It's very important
I
to
know.
keep up
Got it.
with that.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree. And how about the cloud security? So that is also you must be checking it out, right?
We actually have our as a service model. In fact, a bunch
Okay.
of our clients, a large number of our clients are actually on Pega Cloud,
Okay.
or they run their own cloud for that matter. We support both models. We actually have a dedicated SRT team, which is the site reliability team as such that focuses on managing our Pega Cloud infrastructure. And they actually are also covering in terms of how to make sure that our cloud infrastructure is fully secure, and both from not only from a network security and accessibility and roles and personas, what have you. Also the product in itself, they make sure that all of the testing that happens on that cloud environment as well every time something is actually deployed on the cloud.
Got it. Got it. And for the UI automation or like UI automation, one of the biggest challenges is that the scripts need to manage. The framework keeps on breaking. So do
Yeah.
you guys have any kind of like these days some of the market tools have come up with the self-healing frameworks. Do you have also that kind of implementation in your teams? Uh,
We do have
okay.
some of that. I wouldn't say it is complete,
Okay.
but we do actually have in terms of where it recognizes some change that has actually
Yes.
happened and automatically builds that into being able to modify the test scripts to remove any flakiness that may
Yes.
creep in. We have that to an extent in
Okay.
terms of in the existing where it doesn't necessarily recognize the new changes that may come in, while
Got
it
it.
actually recognizes the changes that are actually happening in the existing
Objects.
framework that already exists, right? So there are
Got
two components to it. At times, we would have to actually go and build in for anything that is new.
Got it. I got it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I think new recognition is definitely a new. I think has to build
correct,
freshly. But yeah,
correct,
even if it can self-fill the older frames, buttons, clicks, all that
correct.
stuff. Because minor changes on the screens keep on coming. Either it's a web-based device or mobile. Those are impossible for the development team to be able to give the same pretty much same screen sizing and everything in the next release kind of thing.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. Yeah.
Got it. And how about the tools? Like, do you guys use open source or the mix of tools in the test frameworks? How do you guys use?
We do use a mix of homegrown tools and open
Okay,
source tools, as well as some third-party tools at times,
got it.
where we need, because of the complexity of our environment, and then the platform as big as it is, as complex as it is, there's certainly some customization required, and so your expertise required to be able to customize and manage anything with respect to open source tools becomes more complex. So you need a team that is really, highly skilled in terms of managing those frameworks, and then how we build that. So we do use a mix of these, all three, all three for that matter. So we
Got
do
it.
actually have a dedicated quality service, team that focuses on managing the framework in terms of, from a quality perspective, for the platform as such.
Got it. Yeah, I know. I agree with you. Yeah, because your teams must be very much highly customized to each client kind of thing, and that's
Yeah,
why.
we don't customize it to a client perspective, but from a product perspective, we try to keep it generic across the product as much as possible, because
Okay,
we can't really scale if you start,
too much customization. Got it. For
yeah,
every client. Got it.
that is
Yeah,
one of the,
scalability is not possible. Then it's only you are only building fresh for every client, kind of.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly.
we can't build a very large framework kind of thing.
Correct, correct.
Got it.
So,
Got it. Okay, wonderful.
wonderful.
And for the proper code coverages, what tool you guys use for the tracking the code coverages, that how far you guys have gone? Uh,
We use third-party tools to the most
okay,
part. We also use third-party services at times to be able to measure, our code coverage. We do look to be both, we look at both static and dynamic code coverage for that matter, and really focus on being able to obtain, again, depending on in terms of, are we, what type of releases are we looking at, right? And then how much of that is already tested versus how much of it is new, new code that is going into. We try to make sure that a maximum coverage of the new code actually happens at every increment,
okay,
and then continue to, track the increment. I mean, that's one of the metrics that we actually look at constantly before a release is made, in terms of where are we, when we go through our software lifecycle milestones, we look at in terms of how are we progressing on the coverage. We look at in terms of beyond 80% of code coverage that is required, for us to be able to, that's kind of the minimum bar that we
bar,
set
yeah,
to be able to, make releases and what have you.
okay, okay,
Mhm.
sure, thank you. And Deepak, what is your so now talking about the future? What do you think? With the generative AI space, a lot of AI tools coming. In fact, today only I was reading in these people that Google has is saying that they will be in fact cutting on their existing workforce, keeping in
Yeah.
mind they did not perceive the efficiencies they will achieve with the AI. So now, what do you think? What could be the impact of it overall industry? For the AI, what I feel that it's a reskilling of the jobs. It's not going off the jobs or anything like that, because jobs will be in fact more complex.
I'm not worried about, can, would really, generative AI, as much as, it's probably technology that is as close to human as we have ever seen, right?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And I'm not too worried about, in terms of, is it going to take away a lot of jobs from, engineers or application developers or what have you. I think, like you said, it's really about being able to, keeping up with the skill set, keeping up, learning new things, and where and how much of that you can actually apply. I'm sure there is going to be, it's going to definitely disrupt the industry. There is no doubt, and I think it is here to stay. There is no point in industry or in organizations fighting the adoption of generative AI anymore, right? I mean,
Got it.
it's
Yes,
really about how do
it is
you
there.
embrace it to do your work better and leverage it to do things better in a more efficient and way, in a more productive way, and what have you. And then how do you really, in terms of be able to learn things to apply in so many different areas that you could not actually do things today, right? There are so many things that are mundane that, yeah, a very simple thing is probably you can actually use a generative AI tool to be able to say, you know what, generate me, thousands of records or millions of records of test data for a particular test case. Fantastic. It
Yes,
generates real data. Yet it is not necessarily associated with a particular customer. It can actually, you can ensure that it does not have any, private, PII information or things like that, but it generates all the look-alike kind of test
got it.
data that you can actually feed into your framework, that can actually happen in minutes. Otherwise, somebody would have to write a program to generate this data
Yes,
and have to maintain. So those kind of things are all huge, right? I think such advancement in generative AI, especially, that is going on, I think is going to help a lot in terms of application developers, application, quality assurance domain, and what have you, to be able to do things much faster, better, with a higher accuracy than we've ever done before, right? And I
got it.
think it allows us to be able to address so many use cases that we otherwise probably could not have at the same pace, in terms of what we do.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true. I mean, like, organizations or the people who adopt this generative AI space, I think only will be able to see much higher profitability after 5 years. Otherwise, the rest will not be able to, you know,
Correct. Yeah,
move at
right.
that speed.
I think you said it right. People who don't adopt will
Yeah.
will will pretty easily get left behind.
Yes. Somewhere
And
they will be left behind in the battle, kind of thing.
exactly.
I feel it's the same thing like about the cloud adoption, like because this is cloud is, you can make so many database connectors, you can make so many load balancing connectors within
Correct.
like minutes,
Exactly.
and you can spin off couple of thousand machines within couple of minutes. So
Correct.
that
Yeah.
was not a possibility like 10 years back. I remember 15 years back when I was working connecting it. We had
Correct.
to hardly procure 12 machines, I think 15 hardly for a test. Then
Right.
it was like 3 month PO,
Yeah.
and we were following up with another company, Rhode Island, that hey, are you sending the hardware? Then they sent the hardware. Then the hardware came to main security. Main security saying we are checking it out. So
Right.
it,
Exactly.
then it came to lab guy. Lab guy say now it's my job to audit it. So
Right. So
then
yeah, you said it right, in terms of, let's say you need certain infrastructure for a length of time. You're actually testing for scale, let's say,
yeah,
right? And you don't want to buy all that infrastructure and keep it in your data center and manage that forever. You just want it for 2 months, 3 months, whatever. And
yes,
there's so much ability to be able to auto scale and then be able to scale that infrastructure to what you need, use that for that time, pay for that time, rather than having to own that and manage that, and all of that, for that matter, right?
yeah. I see it to be a huge efficiency, in terms of that. Same thing I see that maybe AI will bring that kind of efficiency that which people who are adopting, they will be able to see it. Others who are not that much in the mindset to adopt it, like even in marketing we say it, that hey, cold call doesn't work all the time, but it works certain places where the intent is high. So,
Correct.
but all the channels need to be nurtured. You need to do podcasts, you need to do cold call, you need to do cold email, you need to do social media, you need to do branding. Like these are self-feeding channels to each other.
Yeah.
Uh, but if you go back 20 years back, people will pick up Yellow Book, they'll make a call, and they made 20 calls, they got one business.
Absolutely. And having said that, the impact of generative AI and what have you, that across all of these disciplines, what I still believe is that computer science, as a as a domain, and as fundamental technology, is still very, very important for are developers, for software developers to understand it well, and to be able to design, architect systems, leveraging such technology is still very important. So it doesn't become any easier in terms of, okay, you don't have to do, it's not like you don't have to do computer science anymore, and it does everything for you type of thing, right? It's important to have that human judgment of where you use it, how you use it, for what you use it, all of that, doing it in the right ethical fashion and what have you. Being able to actually make sure in terms of it is done right, architected right for your use cases, and how you're using it and whatever, right? So I think that is
Yes.
still important.
Got it. Wonderful. Sure. Thank you. And now coming, Deepak, next question, like, what do you think about the quality, product quality? How product quality function will be managed after 2 to 5 years, and what could be the tools or the people's skill set in the managing, the test life cycle or the product quality life cycle of different products in the coming 5 to 7 years time range?
I think 5 to 7 years is quite a bit of a time frame if you ask me, in terms of how much technology is actually changing,
Yes.
right? In my mind, in terms of, if you want to be able to manage your quality of tools and the infrastructure, and then everything actually comes with a cost, right?
Yes.
So my thinking is in terms of, one is, first of all, to be able to understand the objective of why you're doing what you're doing, and then how why are you using these tools, and and how do you prioritize, right? Identifying the most critical tools and services and infrastructure that you need, and investing in that, and then being able to prioritize that versus other things can potentially actually help, right? That is one. I would also say, in terms of, as I said, everything comes with a cost, and everybody looks at it in terms of how do you manage and how do you optimize the usage of resources and your budgets in what you do. Whether you do look at in terms of, you automate the heck out of everything, and then try to, use automation to the fullest extent, of being able to leverage, your quality assurance, whether you're able to standardize and consolidate tools to be able to make it more generic, and invest in a few tools versus others, leveraging, whether it is open source alternatives, or what have you. You make a call in terms of whether you invest in third party tools, or whether you invest in open source alternatives, or what have you. Balancing, some of the cloud services. I mean, you brought up a good point in terms of leveraging cloud services where you can, and then the cloud services can be very expensive if they're not used
Yes.
judiciously as
Yeah.
well. Your
Agree.
bills can go up
Bills
very
can go
quickly.
very high. Yes.
So being able to do, so the optimization of resources, I think, is going to be a good thing in the next 5 years, as we move forward in that area. Third is in terms of keeping up with the tools and technologies, and maintaining, and looking for constant continuous improvement, right? As far as
Yes.
implementing a regular maintenance schedule, regular audit schedule, like we talked about from a security point of view, what have you, being able to put in a monitoring aspect of both the infrastructure as well as your quality measures, or what have you, are all going to be important, and continue to, should be on the top of mind. And we talked about training and skill development. Skill development is something, very, very important. One of the things I always talk about within our engineering teams, that, developers need to have a quality mindset, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And they can't think it is somebody else's problem. So if they are writing, 2 lines of code, it better be the
Working.
best 2 lines of code that they ever write, right?
Good point.
And then, yeah, and everybody who writes code should really be accountable for the quality. And how do you develop that kind of skill set, and then continue to keep up with the changing technology, and then improve the skills as we go? I think is another key area in terms of what we would actually focus on, I think, in the next 3 to 5 years. I think a couple of the things in terms of, we talked about the advancement of AI. We talked about I think one of the things is the focus on user experience. I think that's only going to continue to increase with the expectations of customers, as far as how they experience your products. So, in the quality field, I think people also need to understand the importance of user experience, and how do you relate that to your client, satisfaction, for that matter, from a testing point of view. I think the adoption of CI/CD practices,
Yes,
makes will only continue to improve and make things easier, better, faster, for deployment of products. And I think that you will see, is really grow, as well.
agree.
Security testing is another area that will become more and more integral part. It's not even going to be a separate part. It becomes part of your software development
Life
life
cycle.
cycle,
Got it.
as we talked about, right? One offshoot thing I think probably in the next 5 years is this focus around potentially environmental sustainability. There may be a lot of improvement or asks from clients in terms of, okay, tell me, how does your product support environmental sustainability? There are already clients asking for, how are your products being, what do you contribute positively, negatively? How do you contribute to the footprint of the environmental sustainability, or what have you? Some of those are probably what you will see as key things, that you will look for in the next 3 to 5 years. Although these are, speculations, but that's kind of, my opinion, if you will.
No, it makes sense, Deepak. I think you talk put wonderful points. Yeah, I agree with you. CI/CD, I'm definitely a big fan of it. I
Yeah,
feel it's gonna go more and more into life cycle, either dev or test, and
correct.
it will be like everywhere, and everybody does it by default. It's nobody cycle. It's the same dev and test job which you do day and night. Inside
Correct.
that you have embedded CI/CD. So you
Correct.
don't call it even a separate department kind of thing. So,
Exactly.
no.
Exactly.
So it's
Yeah.
like part of the skill set or
Yeah.
part of the job.
Correct.
Uh, and
Every developer should really know what that pipeline actually, how the pipeline operates,
yes,
and what they need to do to be able to, deploy their own, code
code into the
into each
yes.
of the environments, and how that progresses. Definitely should be a default skill set, if you will.
Yeah, I agree with you. And number two, I do agree with you. In fact, I remember even now we are doing a lot of even in the Bank of America we had the same issue that we are buying a lot of licenses, but we don't know what happened to them. Like we
Huh.
just bought it, now nobody's using them. After
Right.
some months we realize, "Arey, nobody's using it, but we are paying.
Paying
And
for it.
sometime we are paying for a couple of years, and then we realize, no, okay, why
Yeah.
we bought it? Oh, that was the plan, but now I think we don't want to use it. Then let's ask them not to bill us.
Correct. Yeah,
So
I think those are regular checks that you will
yeah, regular
actually
checks.
have to
Yeah,
do from a hygiene perspective to
yes.
manage that.
In fact, there could be some kind of like I think there are a few companies who are saying we'll help you to optimize all your SaaS softwares.
Yeah,
I don't know if you heard of a company. I was talking to one company, Zuluri. They're
yeah,
saying we are SaaS optimization stack. You
yeah.
give all your passwords and IDs for all the SaaS licenses you have bought. We'll keep an eye that are you logging in over there or not.
Right.
So, and
Right.
if you're not logging in, we'll tell you, hey, you're not even logging in. What is the point of paying?
Exactly. I mean, it's also a very similar, what you said is right. Even from a cloud infrastructure point of view, it's easy to spin up instances and,
Yeah.
and really get
Yes.
them going, right? And people forget that they need to shut it down. People forget they need to,
Yeah, even we had
you know,
similar kind of issues.
right.
Once we had put some code on the GitHub, one of our developers, and obviously in our startup journey,
Yeah,
and then I think that guy, he like obviously we did not have very senior guys with us, and
yeah.
he was quite a younger guy, and I think he put public plus private key both on the GitHub.
On the
So somebody stole it, and next day, oh my God, I think in the night when we were sleeping, somebody used 100 machines from
yeah.
our ID. So my God, now who is going to pay this bill? So
Correct.
yeah, in that sense, usage or the security both are like issue in the coming years, because now the stacks are more complex. It's not that hey, I have kept my 100 box in my office building, nobody can enter in over there. So
Exactly. I
right,
couldn't
and
agree with you.
anybody can steal my password and then just hack in into my account and behave like me. Like
Exactly.
right, if
Exactly.
they have just 2 to 3 checks cleared, they're
Yeah.
done. They're in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
virtually sort of thing, you can say.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so much of that is actually kind of happening, and as much as improvements in technology happens, there are also things, improvements in this kind of hacking that happens too,
Yes.
where people, use it for things that they shouldn't really be.
Yeah,
Um,
cloud security is a big issue, I feel. Like even
yeah.
I was telling you, I talked to one guy, Bucci Reddy in California. He
Ah,
like I was amazed that he's only building company on the API security testing. I was like
correct.
amazed that
Correct. Yeah.
somebody building only in the API, inside API also only security. He's saying I'm not testing everything. I just make sure your endpoints are secure. So it
Right.
means security is a big issue because everybody is developing APIs, everybody is borrowing APIs. And
Absolutely.
if anywhere you have a leakage, it means you have leakage with the whole software and whole
Yeah.
database also.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I agree with
Wonderful.
you. So yeah, I think I would now Deepak go ahead with the last question. Any to our any advice to our technology community on the quality issues you want to give for the next 5 years, 2 to 5 years, who are trying to develop their career further?
Yeah, surely. I think from my experience, right? I think we talked a lot about this. If I were to summarize some of the things that, as far as what should people potentially focus on, especially in the quality assurance area over the next 5 years. One is, embrace, and then leverage AI, ML, data science, what have you, in terms of being able to leverage to do things, much better, faster, quicker, for productivity and efficiency for that matter. Right? Think about how do you secure your product. You just actually talked about that quite a bit, in terms of that. That would be. We also talked about the CI/CD technology pipeline. Though, that is another thing to continue to build skill set on, and then as a minimum bar, be able to learn about it, and then how do you put that into practice and what have you. Number four, I would say, think about it in terms of always, building a mindset of shift left testing, right? They shift the testing as much as early as possible, especially in, when you build as a service kind of applications, or products. It is better to be able to start your test as early as possible. I know it is easier said than done, because how do you keep up with the changes coming in is always a question. But a lot of the things that I've learned is doing, shifting left as much as possible makes it more easier, and rather than at the tail end. It really helps in terms of removing the pressure at the tail end, of the of a product release, because you end up getting crunched during that time, right? Prioritizing user experience, we talked about that. Really being able to understand your client use cases that you're building it for. How do you really continue to build on user experience part of it, and being able to test that, I think, is great. um, Keeping up with the technology changes, software updates, and investing in skill development, as we talked about, probably is another area. Those probably would be my advice to the technical community, especially from a quality assurance perspective, to be able to focus on over the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay. Thank you, Deepak. Thank you for all your valuable insights today, and we thank our viewers also for joining in. And Deepak, thank you very much for your time.
It's been such a pleasure, Rupesh, to have this conversation. It was great. You made it very interactive, and I'm grateful for you having me on this podcast. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you.